Please welcome to the stage Dr. Tiffany Manuel.
So I am so happy to be with y'all today. And I'm going to start with something light because I know that most of the conversations that we're going to have today and for the next 3 days are really going to be quite heavy. So we're going to start with Game of Thrones. How many Game of Thrones people do I have in the audience? Okay. Yeah. For those who are not Game of Thrones folks and you don't know anything about that, don't watch it. Don't start. It's bad. It's bad all the way through and through. But I would say my family and I, we are just obsessed. I mean, we got Game of Thrones, we got House of Dragons, we play the board game at home. I mean, throw down, knock down, drag out fights over the Game of Thrones. And one of the things I love about it's really for me, it's a form of escapism. But I will say that one of the characters in that series that I have loved was a character called Hodor, right? And for most of the series, right, Hodor is just a kind of minor character. He doesn't have any real speaking roles. He just kind of goes around and keeps saying Hodor, Hodor, Hodor. And nobody knows kind of what, he doesn't say anything else. He can't say, so people don't know what to make of him. And then there is this epic showdown, like right at the kind of, almost at the close of the series where the forces of good and evil are fighting each other. And Hodor shows up in that he has a major role to play. And his role is to hold the door. And then they show you, right, what has happened to this man, that he had a premonition many years when he was a child of what would happen. It was so dramatic. He got clear about what his role, about what his assignment was, that he had to hold the door so that the forces of good could figure out what to do, to hold off, right? To hold off the folks who were not, right? The folks who were mean-spirited in your communities, you know who they are. Those folks. But I love that because he understood his assignment. He got the role. He understood it. And nobody else around him understood what he was talking about. But he kept saying, I got to hold the door. And everybody kept saying, Hodor, what is that? And then you figure it out. He's holding the door. The reason I love that is because I think so many people in our movement are literally doing that. You are holding the door for so many people who otherwise would not have any opportunity to thrive and even survive. The folks who may not have family, the folks who may not have a church or a congregation supporting them, the folks who may not have friends and family who could help them. You are holding the door for their very survival. I first want to say thank you. Thank you. And now I want you to turn to the person next to you and say, hold the door. Hold the door. Hold the door, y'all. Hold the door. We got to hold the door. Right? So I want to say what's special to me about Hodor is because he didn't exactly know that things, how they were going to work out. He had this vision. He didn't know but he knew that moment was coming where his assignment, his role was going to be critical. He had to have a lot of faith that things would work out all right. Listen, I got to tell you and I got to say, when that showdown was happening, if you had looked at what was happening, you thought, oh boy. Even as a viewer, I was like, oh boy, this is not good. The forces of evil are going down. But he had to have faith. He had to have faith that something different was possible, right? That vision that he had of him, of his role many years ago would work out. Faith is the theme of our sessions today. All over the conference, we hear folks talking about faith. And I believe that it's one of the things that we are being called to as a movement right now in this particular moment. We are holding the door. We are believing that despite the appearance of things, come on, y'all, that things will get better. Yeah, and you know what? That's actually what faith is. That's what it is, moving forward despite the appearance of things. Because if you look outside, even these very walls into the halls of some of the stuff that's in the Capitol, D.C., you have to shake your head and say, Lord, I don't know. I don't know. But faith is moving forward, believing that things are going to get better, right? Because if you didn't, if there was a pathway, if it was clear how things were going to change, you wouldn't need faith. You wouldn't need it. You just follow the pathway. Faith is for folks who understand things are going to get better. They don't know exactly how. They don't know when. They don't know the timing. They don't know the players. They don't know exactly when their role is going to be plugged in to be the crucial role in the way that Hodor did. But they know that it's coming and they're ready and they're holding the door to give folks a chance, to give us a chance to amass the power, to build the power that we need to ultimately win the fights that we're in. I want to share another story. I was recently at this meeting at my church. Every year we have a get out the vote, right? Series of things that we do. And this year, oh boy, we're having meetings about what to do to get out the vote. And as you can imagine, probably like many conversations you're having in your communities, oh boy, there's a lot of wringing of hands going on. Folks are, right? Oh Lord, people don't know. I mean, really, it's tough. Like, right, you know that, right? And so everybody was kind of, down. We were having a lot of defeatist talk, right? Even in church. Now you know that's bad, y'all. When y'all in church and you're like, oh Lord, right? And so one of the elders of the church, and this man who was 90 some odd years old, frail in every possible way, can barely stand up. He sort of raised his hand, and all of us were talking over each other, but he just quietly raised his hand. And so eventually we all kind of stopped because we realized he had been sitting, holding his hand up. And so we said, well, yeah, what are you going to say? And he got up. He actually stood up, and it took him a minute because he's a little bit challenged, right? And so he stood up and he said, y'all young people have no perspective. He said, both my parents were born into slavery. He said, I lived through the absolute terror of Jim Crow in the South, where you could be lynched because somebody was having a bad day and hung from a tree so that your whole family could see, and left there to hang so that your whole family could see that you had no control over your own life and the lives of the people in your community. He said, y'all are in here talking about presidents and this president and that. He said, I lived through Herbert Hoover, and he was bad. Right. So when y'all tell me that it's hard, I don't know what to say. He said, I don't know what to say. You don't have any perspective. And so one of us in the group said, hey, but the issues that we're fighting, because we don't want to have to go back to that point, right, of the days that you're talking about. And he said, good. Then get organized. Fight like hell, and take your faith with you into every conversation you're having. Well, we got real quiet after that, right? Because I want to say, right, the kind of faith that you got to have to go through that, right? He had that faith that at some point his parents, that slavery would end, right? That we would be pushing hard enough to end that. Faith that at some point Jim Crow, with all of the organizing we're doing, would come down, shatter. Faith that at some point, right? Not only would you have different presidents who made some different choices, we would probably push them a little bit more, but they would have different presidents, but you might even have a Black president. Imagine what that must have felt like. Imagine that. To have the faith to have that. He couldn't have predicted how it would happen, when it would happen, what time it was happening, but the faith, right, is what kept him going. Turn to your neighbor and say, hold the door. Hold the door. Hold the door. Hold the door. Hold the door, folks. Hold the door. And let me just say this to you all. Faith doesn't mean that you don't have moments of challenge or moments where you have doubts, right? That's part of it. It just means that part, that little voice in you that says, I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. And I'm holding literally the candle of my spirit to make sure that it does. That's right. Faith doesn't mean you don't have doubts. I have to say, I'm the kind of person that whenever I have those moments where I just, I don't know what to say. And I have to say the Supreme Court has given me lots of opportunities for that. I'm a walker. And I kid you not, I have lost 30 pounds this year walking around just like, oh Lord, I gotta take another walk. I gotta take another walk. My sons are teenagers. They're like, what did the Supreme Court do today, Mom? I'm like, baby, Mama need a hot girl walk. I got to get out here and walk. Because I gotta get myself ready so I can light that flame back inside of myself that says, yes, despite the appearance of things, despite a Supreme Court, things are gonna get better. And I'm gonna hold the door for that. Faith doesn't mean that you don't challenge the moment that we're in. You can challenge, folks. It means taking the moment and leveraging it. For those of you who say, Dr. T, how do we do that when we are under-resourced? We don't have what we need, right, to make the meaningful changes that we need to make in people's lives. And I want to say to you about that, listen, folks, you got to get people in your communities out of the scarcity mindset. We do have enough. We do have enough. What will say with Dr. T, we need at least $2 billion just to put the folks who are unhoused today in some kind of meaningful place, right, where they've got some sense of safety. We at least $2 billion. You know what I say to that? We just spent $2.3 billion on fireworks last week to see the sky light up. Now, I don't know about you, I love fireworks. I love it. I love to go watch them, but I would give it up if it meant that every person who is now in a house had a decent place to live. Come on, y'all. The Alliance last year put out a number, said we need $5 billion to make sure that the salaries of the folks who do this work get into the modern age, because we are not paid to do what we need to do well. And folks say, well, Dr. T, where are we going to get $5 billion from? Well, guess what? In this country last year, we spent $5 billion, that exact amount, on paper towel. Now listen, folks, I love a good paper towel. I'm not mad at a paper towel. But I got to tell you, when I was younger in my family, we didn't have a whole lot of paper towel. We were poor. I'm gonna put it out there. We were poor. Listen, we had the WHO method. You washed your hands, you shook them a little bit, and you said, and listen, if it means that folks have a decent place to live and y'all don't get paid what you deserve, I will go back to the method all day long. It works. Don't it work, right? Shake it out. I'm telling you, it works. And we were just talking earlier today. Some of the advocates who know this work nationally have said that we need about almost $400 billion really to do this well, high quality, to make sure that we not only have housing that works, but we also have services around it, wraparound services. And how are we gonna talk about that? Do you know how much we spent last year on lipstick? $500 billion. Now, you know what? I'm a girl who likes a little lipstick. I like the rouge kind. I love it. But I promise you I would give that up if that meant that we had a housing system that worked for people, that gave people a home with dignity. Come on, y'all. So when people ask you and they say, where are we gonna get the money from? You say, I'm asking for the equivalence of the budget that we're spending on fireworks, paper towel, and lipstick to make sure that people have a decent home. Come on, y'all. Unequivocally, that's what we're asking for, literally. And the reason you do that is to get people out of the mindset that we can't do with the scarcity model. Get them out of that. Come on, y'all. We can do a lot better than that. We don't have a money problem. We don't have a resource problem in a country of 325 million people. We don't have a money problem. We have a lack of will problem. And you and I could do something about that. That's a part of the faith. That's a part of our faith. That's faith in action, to get people out of the mindset that they're in and move them to a place that allows them to think bigger, right, than the moment that we think we have. Faith in action is what we're talking about. And I want to say, last thing I'm going to say about faith, faith is an act of resistance. It's an act of resistance, because you got to look at the world that you're in and say, I don't care what I'm seeing. I know this can be better. I don't care what that Supreme Court decision is. I know this can be better. That's an act of resistance. You are saying, despite what's in front of me, we can do so much better. That's an act of resistance. I'm inspired by Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela, many of you, I'm sure, hopefully everybody in this room knows his story, but was jailed for 27 years in South Africa because he was a freedom fighter. Right? Can you imagine what it must have been to be in prison for 27 years, not know when you were going to get out, what was going to happen, not knowing any of that, jailed for fighting for freedom. And in his biography, his autobiography, what he said was, in that jail cell, in solitary confinement no less, every single day I willed myself to take faith and joy with me because they were vitamins for my soul. Did y'all hear that? Vitamins for the soul. This man, while sitting in solitary confinement in one of the most oppressive regimes the world has ever seen, said, I willed myself to see something different in spite of the four walls they had to put me in. Dear friends, hold the door. Hold the door. Hold the door. That's what we're here to do. We have to hold the door. In a moment, you're going to hear Annaleva articulate the vision forward for the Alliance. And you will hear her talk about the new strategic plan. And you'll hear her use words like faith and love and joy and inspiration, right? And belonging and home. And when you hear that, when you hear her talk like that, I want you leaning all the way in. With your full power, with your full energy, with every fiber of your being. And I want you to hold the door with your faith for the vision that she's laying out for us this afternoon. Can y'all do that with me? Now, you know what? I heard Amanda and Deary this morning say, you know what? Listen, I go to church on Sunday. And when there is somebody who says, do you hear that with me? You don't just say, yep. You say, yes. So I'm gonna ask you again. I'm gonna say it again. I want you leaning all the way in with your full power, with your full energy, with every fiber of your being, holding the door with your faith for the vision that she's about to lay out this afternoon. Can you do that with me? All right. Then in that case, then it is my absolute honor to introduce my sister in this work, Annaleva. She is truly somebody who gets up every day holding the door and fighting like hell for this movement. Would you get up on your feet and give her the honor of a hero's welcome this afternoon?